Hello guys, welcome to our channel Java Tech with Ashish. My name is Ashish and today we'll see how to create Spring Boot test service with all the CRUD operations. So what we are gonna do is we will go to Spring Boot initializer website and we will generate Maven project from there. Then we will write our code changes in Eclipse and then we will test our endpoints using postman. So let's see what points we are going to cover in today's tutorial. So as we discussed, we will see what are the steps to create service using Spring Boot initializer website. Then we will see some basic Maven commands. We need to set up the DB and we are gonna create a repository, service and controller layer in our REST service. We will perform some CRUD operations and then we will see some standard request and response for HTTP codes like get, post, put and delete, and we will be using Eclipse, mysql DB and postman to test our REST APIs. So let's start with the tutorial. So this is the Spring Boot initializer website. So you have to select the project as Maven, language Java, version this one. So I have already provided my parameters here like group IDs, artifact, name and everything. The packaging will be jar and Java version is 8, and we need to add the required dependencies from here. So you can add any, if you want to add any dependencies you can add it here. For our project we will need Spring Data JPA and Spring Web. So once you add it here you can click on this tab to see how your form.xml looks like. So if you see, this is my sample form.xml. It has these dependencies in it, and yeah, so it looks good. Now we will generate our project by clicking on this tab. So I have already generated the project and downloaded it in my machine. So let's import it in Eclipse. I will say import existing Maven projects. And then I will provide the path here. So if you open the form.xml file, so you see the it has the dependencies, Spring Data JPA and Spring Boot Starter Web. So I have already modified this one, but for now I'll comment the Spring Data JPA section. So this one I will also comment. So it is commented now, and let's see the structure of our project. So when you create this project from Spring Boot initializer, it will add the by default Java class which has a main function, and we can run this class to run our application. Okay, now we will run the application. So if you see the logs, it is already started with port 8080, which is the by default port text by the Spring Boot application. Now I have the properties ready with me for my application, so I'll be just copying it here in the application properties file. This is my database name. These are username, password, port 8080, and I will keep this property as create. So if you create any model in the in our project, it will directly create the tables in my database. So let me check my uncomment my dependencies and see if it is working fine. So let's uncomment this one, the Spring Boot data JPA, and we will also need this connector. So you could select this connector while creating the Spring initializer setup. You could go here and you could select here as a mysql driver, and if you explore it here, you will see the actual dependency. Okay, anyway, but I have added it separately. So let's try to run it now. Let me restart my application. Let me show you my database I have created. So this is my database and it doesn't have any tables inside it for now. When you will create your models in your project, then it will create the table structure here. So for now you will see that there are no tables exist here in the project. Okay, so application is starting correctly. Now let's see some Maven commands. So if you try to build any Maven project, you have to go here, you have to provide your goals as package and start building it. Okay, so the build is successful. Now let's see if when you build it, it actually copies your jar file inside the target directory. So when you build it, it creates a jar inside target directory, and if you try to clean it, it will delete the jar from the target directory. Okay, so you see the jar is deleted from here. Now there is one more command we will see, Maven install. So you know that whenever we add this dependency in Maven project, it actually copies on your local machine under the M2 repository. So when you try to install anything using Maven, it copies the version of your file under this directory. So you see there is nothing under the this package com.javatech. Okay, so the build is success, and if you see the Maven repository, it has copied your jar file under the M2 repository. So we have seen Maven clean, build and install commands. Now let's start with our project changes. So we will start with the DB. So let's decide what we are gonna do here. So I will copy this package name. Let's decide our project structure. So we will be creating models for our application. These are the DB models. Then we will need repositories. We will need services. We will need controllers package. And we will also need some exception package. So let's say exception, and we will also need the front-end models to map it with the DB model. So I will call it as a beans. Okay, so this is our project structure. Now let me create our first class and model. I will call it, we will create a student class. We will add 2 fields in it. Private string name. So we'll add these 2 fields, and now we need to map these fields with our DB. So let's start the setup with by providing Hibernate properties. So I need to mention this as an entity. The table name. So remember this property we mentioned here, JP Hibernate detail auto create. So it will automatically create your table inside your database. Let me import these packages. Now we have to mention this field as an ID. Then we need to mention this as a generated value. So now I have generated the properties and getter setters for these variables. So we need to provide the column name as well. So now we have created our model class. Now let's try and run the application, and let's see if it creates a table under your database. Okay, so if you see, the application has already started. Now let's see if it has created a table inside it. Yes, so if you see, the table has been created under our database with the fields we mentioned. So ID and name, these fields we declared in our model class. So now we will generate a repository class for our model. So I will create an interface. We'll call it student repository. We will mention this as a repository and you need to extend it with CRUD repository. And you need to mention your entity, which is in our case student, and the type of your primary key, that is long. So yes, this is very easy. Now we would need a service class, so let's create a structure first. So we will create a service class now, student service. I will mention that this is our service layer, and we will create a student controller. Yes, so we have designed our structure. We have student model, we have student repository, and we have student service. So now we need to create one more class, that is under beans. So we never pass the DB objects or DB details from the front end, so we need to pass some wrapper class for it. So I will call it as a student wrapper, inside which we will use the same fields. So we created the wrapper class as well. So now let's start with our business logic. So the first method would be to save our object into the DB. So we will be returning, let's say, void save student, and here we will accept the wrapper class first. Input student, now here we need to map these details to our DB object. So I will create a new object, and now let's map the fields to this object, student.set id input student.get id student.set name. So now we have populated the DB object, but the thing is we need to save it to our DB. For that we need to auto-wire our repository. So we will auto-wire our student repository here. And it's very simple to save it. You just need to call repository dot save and pass your entity here, and it's done. So if you pass any details here, and it is gonna save it. So let's see if it is saving successfully. We will create a controller layer as well. So let's create a controller to save the student into DB. So I will call it as a post mapping. Post mapping method. This is the URL pattern. Save student. So here I have created a method to save the student. This is an endpoint, and now we need to auto wire our service class here. So that is private student service. And we need to call the method from this place. We have to pass the student wrapper. Before that, let's do one thing. So we saved the DB object inside the DB. So let's take the when you save it to the DB, it will return the actual saved values, and you will get the latest values saved in the DB. Now you can so let's do one thing. We will not pass this ID, and we will only pass the name, and when you save it in DB, you will get the ID in this object. And now we can populate the student wrapper class. We can override these values. Set ID. We will set these details, whatever we will get it from the DB, and we will return it from here. Return. We will change the type to student wrapper, and let's return the updated values. So we are calling it from the controller. So let's get this object back here, and we will send in the response with the updated details. Now let's test this API. Let me start our application first. So this is the postman to test your REST API endpoints. So our application is running on localhost colon 8080 slash the URL pattern is save student and it's a post method, so you'll use post, and we will be passing a JSON and the format is yes. So I will create a simple JSON here and I will pass only name to the DB. So I will say Ashish, and now let's okay, so we have populated our request here. We will say post method, and this is our endpoint. We will say raw, and we'll select JSON as our input, and let's send it. Okay, now you got this response from the server that the student has been registered with ID 1. So let's see if we have correctly inserted the values in our DB. Okay, so if you see, the values have been inserted in DB correctly. So let's try another example. I will say Sachin. Now it returned ID 2 and Sachin, and it should be saved in DB. Yes, so there are two values inside the DB. So we are done with the post operation. Now we will create a get controller for our application. So we will go to student service and we will write a method which will give you the actual object for the ID. So guys, I have created this method to get the student by ID. So we will accept an ID and we will call our repository method find by ID. It will give you the optional data for the ID. If it is present, then we will get the DB object and we will map it to our output object. We will be returning this on front end. So yeah, this is done. However, we are missing one use case where if the data is not present in the DB. So in this case, we will need to handle this as an exception. So we'll create an exception class. We'll create this let's say record not found. We need to handle it for the HTTP statuses. So we need to mention here response status, and the code would be HTTP status dot not found, and need blank constructor So guys, we have created this class to handle the if we don't find any record in the DB. So we will mention we are going to use this to handle the HTTP statuses. So we need to mention this annotation here, and the code is HTTP status not found. So this would be the status code we are going to return. Now let's throw this exception from your service class. Throws record not found exception. Okay guys, I have renamed this class to record not found exception, and I'm using this in at our method get by student ID. So if you don't find any record in the DB, we are going to throw the exception. Throw new record not found exception. Now let's call this method from our controller class. I will create a method get mapping. The mapping would be /get student, and I will accept an ID as a path variable. So we need to add it here as well. Record not found exception, and Okay, so we are done with our logic to get the data by ID. So let's start it. Okay guys, so our application has been started. Let's observe one thing. Let's see our DB. So if you open your DB and check your table, you don't see any entries in the DB. So the reason is we have this application properties and we mentioned that this is create. So whenever it starts, every time it will create a new table, and so that's why the old values are getting deleted from the DB. So let's make it update. So it will create only once, and from the next time it will only update the DB. So let's start it again. So the application has been started again. Now let's save these values once again. So I have saved one, searching second. Let's save 2 records. Okay, so now we have saved 3 records. Now let's call our new endpoint, that is get student, and we will be passing the ID. So remember, that is a get method. Need to pass the ID. Let's confirm the endpoint. So it's get student and /id. So if you send the request, you will get the correct record. Now let me pass 2. It returns Ashish. Now let me pass something which is not present in the DB. Okay, so if you see, this error as not found 404, which we have set in our service method. We are throwing it from the service method if it doesn't find any record in the DB. So we are done with the post and get mapping. So let's move to the update. Let me create a new method to update the record. So guys, I have created the method to update the student details. So let's see the flow. So first we will see if we have any records. If it doesn't have, then we will throw an exception saying record not found. And if we find the record, then we are gonna update the name with the new updated values, which we will get from the front end or postman, and then we will save it. So it will save against the same ID, and then we will populate all the updated values on the front end model, which is student wrapper, and we will return it. So return student wrapper. Now let's create a method inside controller. I will say put mapping structure would be similar to this, so I will copy this code here, put mapping update student okay. So we are done with the update method. We need to change one more thing here. We need to call the update method update student. Yes, we need to throw this exception as well. Now let's start the server and see how it works. Okay guys, so the application has been started. So let's see if we have the existing records in the DB. Let me refresh the DB, and yes, we have. So now what I will do, I will update this record, the first one. I have provided the ID here and the updated value, searching updated. The type would be put and the endpoint is update student. Now let me hit it. Okay, so if you see, the record has been updated with the updated value. Let's see it in the DB as well. Sachin updated. Okay, now let me try to send some IDs which are not present in the DB. Yes, so we are getting 404 not found, so that means the record is not present in the DB. So guys, we have covered post, put and get operation. The only operation pending is to delete the record from the DB. So let's create it. We'll say public void delete by ID. We will accept. So as I have created this method to delete the record by ID, so we will accepting an ID. We will find the existing record. If it is present, then we will get the actual object and we will call the delete method in our repository. Else we will throw an exception saying a record not found. Now let's create a method inside our controller. I will say @delete mapping. This would be similar to the get one, so I'll copy this code from here. Delete student by ID. Now we need to call the delete method. And we will say no content to display. So guys, we are done with our tutorial. So if you liked the video, please like, subscribe and share the link. Thank you so much.